For more than a decade before the outbreak of the American Revolution in 1775, tensions had been building between colonists and the British authorities. The French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War, from 1756 to 1763, brought new territories under the power of the Crown. But the expensive conflict led to new and unpopular taxes, attempts by the British government to raise revenue by taxing the colonies, notably the Stamp Act of 1765, the Townshend Acts of 1767, and the Tea Act of 1773, met with heated protest among many colonists, who resented their lack of representation in Parliament and demanded the same rights as other British subjects. Colonial resistance led to violence in 1770.
Fire! Fire! Fire, damn you! Fire!
When British soldiers opened fire on a mob of colonists, killing 5 men in what became known as the Boston Massacre. After December of 1773, when a band of Bostonians altered their appearance to hide their identity, boarded ships, and dumped 342 chests of tea into the Boston Harbor, known today as the Boston Tea Party. An outraged Parliament passed a series of measures known to us Americans as the Intolerable Acts, or even the Coercive Acts, and they were designed to reassert imperial authority in Massachusetts. In response, a group of colonial delegates, including George Washington of Virginia, John and Samuel Adams of Massachusetts, Patrick Henry of Virginia, and John Jay of New York. They all met in Philadelphia in September of 1774 to give voice to their grievances against the British Crown. This First Continental Congress did not go so far as to demand independence from Britain, but it denounced taxation without representation, as well as the maintenance of the British Army in the colonies without their consent. It issued a Declaration of Rights due to every citizen, including life, liberty, and property, assembly, and trial by jury. The Continental Congress voted to meet again in May of 1775 to consider further action, but by that time, violence had already broken out. On the night of April 18, 1775, hundreds of British troops marched from Boston to nearby Concord, Massachusetts, in order to seize an arms cache. Paul Revere and other riders sounded the alarm, and colonial militiamen began mobilizing to intercept the redcoats. On April 19th, local militiamen clashed with British soldiers in the battles of Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts, marking the shot heard round the world that signified the start of the American Revolutionary War. When the Second Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia, delegates, including the new additions of Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, voted to form a Continental Army, with Washington as its commander-in-chief. On June 17th, in the Revolution's first major battle, colonial forces inflicted heavy casualties on the British regiment of General William Howe at Breed's Hill in Boston. The engagement, known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, ended in a British victory, but lent encouragement to the revolutionary cause. Throughout that fall and winter, Washington's forces struggled to keep the British contained in Boston, but artillery captured at Fort Ticonderoga in New York helped shift the balance of that struggle in the late winter. The British evacuated the city in March of 1776, with Howe and his men retreating to Canada to prepare a major invasion of New York. By June of 1776, with the Revolutionary War in full swing, a growing majority of the colonists had come to favor independence from Britain. And on the momentous day of July 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress voted to adopt the Declaration of Independence, drafted by a 5-man committee, including Benjamin Franklin and John Adams, but it was written mainly by Jefferson. That same month, determined to crush the rebellion, the British government sent a large fleet along with more than 34,000 troops to New York. In August, Howe's redcoats routed the Continental Army on Long Island. Washington was forced to evacuate his troops from New York City by September. Pushed across the Delaware River, Washington fought back with a surprise attack in Trenton, New Jersey, on Christmas night, and won another great victory at Princeton to revive the rebels' fleeting hopes before making winter quarters at Morristown. British strategy in 1777 involved two main prongs of attack, aimed at separating New England, where the rebellion enjoyed the most popular support, from the other colonies. To that end, General John Burgoyne's army marched south from Canada toward a planned meeting with Howe's forces on the Hudson River. Burgoyne's men dealt a devastating loss to the Americans in July by retaking Fort Ticonderoga, while Howe decided to move his troops southward from New York to confront Washington's army near the Chesapeake Bay. The British defeated the Americans at Brandywine Creek, Pennsylvania, on September 11th, and entered Philadelphia on September 25th. Washington rebounded to strike Germantown in early October before withdrawing to winter quarters near Valley Forge. Howe's move had left Burgoyne's army exposed near Saratoga, New York, and the British suffered the consequences of this on September 19th, when an American force under General Horatio Gates defeated them at Freeman's Farm in the First Battle of Saratoga. After suffering another defeat on October 7th at Bemis Heights, which is the Second Battle of Saratoga, Burgoyne surrendered his remaining forces on October 17th. The American victory at Saratoga would prove to be a turning point of the American Revolution, as it would prompt France, which had been secretly aiding the rebels since 1776, to enter the war openly on the American side, though it would not formally declare war on Great Britain until June of 1778. The American Revolution, which had begun as a civil conflict between Britain and its colonies, had become a world war. During the long, hard winter at Valley Forge, Washington's troops benefited from the training and discipline of the Prussian military officer Baron Friedrich von Steuben, which was sent by the French, and the leadership of the French aristocrat, the Marquis de Lafayette. On June 28, 1778, as British forces under Sir Henry Clinton, who had since replaced Howe as supreme commander, attempted to withdraw from Philadelphia to New York, Washington's army attacked them near Monmouth, New Jersey. The battle effectively ended in a draw, as the Americans held their ground, so technically you could say the Americans won that one. But Clinton was able to get his army and supplies safely to New York. On July 8th, a French fleet commanded by the Comte d'Estaing arrived off the Atlantic coast, ready to do battle with the British. A joint attack on the British at Newport, Rhode Island in late July had failed, and for the most part the war settled into a stalemate phase in the north. However, the Americans suffered a number of setbacks from 1779 to 1781, including the defection of General Benedict Arnold to the British and the first serious mutinies within the Continental Army. In the South, the British occupied Georgia by early 1779 and had captured Charleston, South Carolina in May of 1780. British forces under Lord Charles Cornwallis then began an offensive in the region, crushing Gates' American troops at Camden in mid-August. Though the Americans scored a victory over Loyalist forces at Kings Mountain in early October, Nathaniel Greene replaced Gates as the American commander in the South that December. Under Greene's command, General Daniel Morgan scored a victory against a British force led by Colonel Banastre Tarleton at Cowpens, South Carolina, on January 17, 1781. By the fall of 1781, Greene's American forces had managed to force Cornwallis and his men to withdraw to Virginia's Yorktown Peninsula, near where the York River empties into the Chesapeake Bay. Supported by a French army commanded by General Jean-Baptiste Rochambeau, Washington moved against Yorktown with a total of around 14,000 soldiers, while a fleet of 36 French warships offshore prevented British reinforcement or evacuation. Trapped and overpowered, Cornwallis was forced to surrender his entire army on October 19th. Claiming illness, the British general sent his deputy, Charles O'Hara, to surrender. After O'Hara approached Rochambeau to surrender his sword, Washington gave the nod to his own deputy, Benjamin Lincoln, who accepted it. Though the movement for American independence effectively triumphed at the Battle of Yorktown, contemporary observers did not see that as the decisive victory yet. British forces remained stationed around Charleston, and the powerful main army still resided in New York, though neither side would take decisive action over the better part of the next 2 years. The British removal of their troops from Charleston and Savannah in late 1782 finally pointed to the end of the conflict. British and American negotiators in Paris signed preliminary peace terms late that November, and on September 3rd, 1783, Great Britain formally recognized the independence of the United States of America in the Treaty of Paris. At the same time, Britain signed separate peace treaties with France and Spain, who had been at war with Great Britain since 1779, which thus brought the American Revolution to a close after 8 long years of war. I hope you enjoyed this brief history of the American Revolution, as today is the 4th of July, America's birthday. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Baron Friedrich von Steuben. Steuben? Is it Steuben or Steuben? Baron Friedrich von Steuben. Steuben. Damn it. Baron Friedrich von Steuben. Damn it, I keep saying it wrong.